In this session, we are going to be reviewing the literature and talking about methodological issues in research. Again, a good many objectives here, but basically they are understanding all the components of the lit review, the sources, the strategies, the data, and then we're going to be talking about variables and sample size in research and how you go about selecting an instrument for your study. Most people don't really like doing related literature, but I think by the end of this, you'll understand the importance of why we do it, because you've created a research question. Now, what's out there about this literature? Actually, I like to do the related literature before I even do the research question, but many people prefer to create the research question and then see what the related literature is in the different sources. So why? Why do we have related literature? It defines the perimeters of the investigator's field. It places the research question in perspective. You learn which methods and instruments have been useful and those that have been less potential. You avoid unintentional replication of study. What if you do a study that's already been done in the complete way that you want to do it? And it helps the researchers interpret the significance of their own research. There are 5 steps in writing the literature review. First of all, of course, is identifying a topic, and we're going to talk about topic in just a minute, but you certainly want a topic if you're going to be spending that much time on a study. You want a topic that you enjoy and you're interested in. And then you locate the relevant literature. You critically evaluate that literature. You organize the literature, and then you present the information identifying the research and the purpose and the benefits of the research. We talked about the topic, because the topic is very important. I have lots of topics I would like to do a research study on, but you've got to look and see, is it too general? I told you I chose high school dropout. Very, very general. However, I was going to look at characteristics about that no one had looked at before. It can be too specific. If it's too specific, you're not going to be able to find any information about it, and it's going to be very difficult for you to complete your study. It may be overused, something that's looked at, and so you don't want to spend your time coming up with a study that has been researched, and research might be outdated. Some things in counseling, thought stopping is very outdated. People don't use that anymore. You learn to allow the thoughts to gently move away as opposed to trying to stop the thoughts, which all that does is reinforce it. Do not warrant further investigation. It's just no need to look at that anymore. No one's interested. And again, it's been overused. When you actually are looking through all the research that's out there, you want to see if there are loopholes in the existing research. I'm going to use my example again. Because even though people had looked at it, there was a loophole. I just couldn't believe it was all about socioeconomic status. That didn't sit right with me. What are the benefits of existing studies, and will a new study add to the literature? Because you're looking at those gaps. What are the limitations of the study under consideration? And there are limitations. What if you were using a population at a southeastern private school? That may not generalize to a population in another state in a public school system. So you have to think about that. Also, issues like sexual abuse, especially in adolescence. Those are all kept hidden, and you can't find much information about that. Conducting a lit review will orient the researcher with existing literature, and really one of the main reasons. And you want to be able to make a contribution to what's already out there in the literature. And making sure that you're not doing an unnecessary replication. Again, some of this to me is very redundant when you're saying orient the researcher with existing literature, because that's exactly what you're doing when you are studying all the related literature. How a topic or a question will make a contribution to existing literature. We've already talked about that. And again, it's not a necessary replication. And then you're going to look, is the topic manageable? First of all, are you truly interested? Does it meet all the assignment professional requirements? What if you're doing a dissertation? Does it meet all the requirements for your dissertation? Can I access enough information? Is there enough out there for me to bring into my study so that I can do some comparison? Is a paper on this topic feasible? There are some topics that are much more difficult to do, again, because of confidentiality and just areas that are very hard to manage. When you're looking at literature and you're choosing, okay, well, what is it good? Is it bad? Is this something that I should use? First of all, you want to see, is it a scholarly work? Does this come from an expert? I have a lot of books from the original source, like Adler or Young, that I really treasure those because I like going back to their original work. So, is it scholarly work? Is there someone that's an expert that's writing this? Does it have application to the topic? And is it based on theory? Has it been reviewed? Can you feel assured that this is true, the facts that you are getting from this? Is it from a peer-reviewed journal? Published journal articles are a common source of literature, and I love students to use journal articles or books by experts, because journal articles have an editorial board that review the work, make corrections, and determine whether they are publishable. And I'm on some editorial boards, and I'm looking for specific things to make sure that I feel like this is worthy of being called peer-reviewed. And the work has been reviewed, edited, critiqued, or corrected. Now, is the source trustworthy? I said a book by Alfred Adler. Would that be trustworthy? Of course it would be if you were doing something on his individual psychology. Is the source current? I usually tell students, don't go back 10 years, unless it is an original source of someone that has written it many years ago. But for the most part, in journal articles, don't go back 10 years. Is the source complete? Is it biased or unbiased? And that may be something you have to decide when you read it. Is the source accurate and logical? And be very cautious of material on the web. I really don't like students using web articles as sources because you don't know if they are accurate. I know you sit with AI now. There are a lot of things that you don't even know pictures anymore are accurate, logical. So use good sources that are trustworthy. Let's talk about the difference in a primary source and a secondary source. A primary source is work that is considered the original report of research, providing first-hand information, and it's the first published account. So interviews, observations, surveys, the data from an experiment is original. So, and many times journal articles are primary sources because that is the original work of the researcher that is publishing that work. Secondary sources. Secondary sources are just secondhand account of the information. Textbooks. Textbooks are secondary sources. Magazines, newspapers, television, radio. Some journal articles can be considered secondary sources. Documentaries, encyclopedias, and nonfiction books. So those are all secondary sources. Okay, let's talk about common databases for social and behavioral sciences. Don't we love that the library is online and you can do so much research at home on your computer? There are a lot of databases you can use. There's 4 that I use a lot, and that's Academic Search Premier, ERIC, PsycInfo, and Psych Articles. I use those 4 more than any other. Now, if I'm looking for an instrument for measurement, then I'm going to use Mental Measurement Yearbook or Psych Tests. But for the most part, you have so many databases. You may put in a subject and get 3,000 articles. So I always tell students, start with Academic Search Premier and then add additional databases. And then when you get all your databases, make sure that you use an advanced search because you have 3 different areas you can put in something that you're looking for. And I usually put in abstract, not title or the whole text, because the whole text will give you too much. But if you use the abstract, you'll be able to get articles to look at that fit more with your topic. Assessing relevance. Is it going to be useful to you? Because you're going to get all these articles. How are you going to decide what's good for you and what's not? I love this. Was the methodology the same? And I tell students all the time, you are trying to use a certain methodology. Maybe you're using a multiple regression. And you want to look at other studies that use a multiple regression. That's really going to help you understand how to do your study. Were the demographics of the participants similar? Again, if you're doing a study on adolescents, you don't want to find studies on young adults in the workforce because it's not going to be relevant to what you're doing. Or expanding on a particular research study. I do not mind if you expand on a particular study. You're not totally redoing that study. You may be changing some of the variables around. As I said, there were a ton of studies on high school dropout, but I expanded on it a completely different way. And by the way, it was published because it was very different. Now, note taking and storage of sources, you're going to find a lot of information on that. And let me just tell you what I say. We all do that differently. Everybody compiles their information differently. Everybody has note taken. I'm old school. I'll print, when I was doing my dissertation, I printed all the articles I was interested in, spent a fortune. And I would have piles on the floor. This was one variable, this was another. You can organize this any way you want. You can put it in your computer, you can have note cards. So there's a lot of different ways that you can organize your sources. Presenting the information, you're probably not going to present the information until you get toward the end. But I will say this, when you are writing, the use of section headers creates clear and logical flow. I love section headers. People can understand. We're going to look just in a minute at APA section headers and how you can use that. So you want to organize your information in a way where individuals can understand where you are in your research, what area you're talking about by using good section headers. We now have a 7th edition, 2016, of the Publication Manual of the American Psychological Association. If you don't have one, get one. I keep it by my desk because there's a lot of information in there. And rarely ever do I write a paper that I do not have to refer back to the publication manual to know exactly how to cite certain information. It also has information in there about syntax and grammar and language bias. So it's a really good thing to have a new 7th edition APA manual. I personally, it will tell you can use 12-point Times New Roman or Courier. I personally like Times New Roman. I think it's easier to read and looks more professional. You'll have 1-inch margin at the top, bottom, and both sides. So that makes it very simple to set up your computer. Now, your title page. You can use either professional or student. I usually ask students to use student title page because it's easier for them. Professional requires an author note and some other information that they really don't have the information to put in there. So I'm telling you, you can use the student title page, and it is number 1 in your paper.